Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're now at the 4th annual LinuxPiter conference in St. Petersburg. My name is Vasily Tolstoy. I'm a member of programming committee of the conference. And together with me is Mr. Remi Denis Courmont.
Hello.
Hello. The great guy behind the VLC.
Not alone.
So, I understand that you have given a talk at this conference. Can you say in a few words what it was about?
I was introducing the history of the project and also the new happenings within the project. So latest, what's happening, what's new in the new latest version that we came with earlier this year, and also what we are working on and planning to release within a year or so.
There is the VLC. Everybody knows that it's a video player.
Yeah.
But I understand that it's a bit more than the video player. It's actually an ecosystem of things. Can you comment on that?
In a way, there's VLC as an application, which is a media player, but can also be used to stream out. And for instance, one of the new features we have now is sending to your Chromecast, so you can send from your VLC media player to a device with a Chromecast attached to it. And so we can also, instead of just playing locally, we can also send out to some other, to somewhere else. And beyond that, of course, the foundation behind the non-profit organization behind the application is also supporting other software projects like libraries, that underlying components that are used by the application and by other multimedia-related open source projects. So yeah, in a sense, it's a whole collection of things that we have, both within the player itself and also on a larger scale within the foundation that we have around supporting the project.
See, there is an opinion that the media player becomes more and more the commodity. Mm-hmm. You have the more or less standard file. You put it some black box, and then it plays on your screen. Everything is standard. There is nothing interesting going to happen there, and so on. What's your opinion on the future of this area of development?
Well, there are always, obviously, yeah, playing a video is just like something that we've been doing. Digital video is like 15 years old now in every home. Most countries have switched over to, even television has switched over to digital, and now it's normal to stream via streaming services, free or paid for. Having said that, you still have new technology coming, so you have ever more efficient and more computationally intensive video codecs. So there was a 264 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and there was a 265, and now there's AV1, for instance, and it's always a new algorithm that is used to stream the video ever more efficiently, and the resolution is always increasing, and now we have also deeper colors. So there are still new features coming in the area of video encoding and video playback. Of course, we do have VLC as a project has a problem with competition from more integrated solutions like Netflix or equivalents. Maybe I don't know in Russia, but in Western countries that's a big problem because people just prefer to have a player and the content in the same place, and of course for us it's a bit difficult to compete with that because as an open source project we obviously can't be providing a streaming service. We don't have the financials and the structure for that. So that's a bit of a challenge for us. But we're trying to improve that and add support for actual streaming services properly going forward so that we can actually stay relevant. But let's see about that. Of course, it's early to say.
Let's see. As far as I understand, the video and audio encoding and decoding, it's not the thing to which you need only the programmer who will do this with a more efficient programming algorithm. It has to do something with the human perception and with the other subtle issues. And it's at the same time mathematical and biological thing, so tightly connected altogether, which means that if you want to efficiently, if I understand, develop software of this kind, you need some scientific support. And how you get it?
So yeah, on the encoding side, of course, on the decoding side, you don't actually have that much research going on because it's really just applying the algorithm, the specified syntax, mathematical syntax of like these sets of 0 and 1s means this picture, and they're just set of rules that you have to follow. On the encoding side, there is indeed psychovisual aspects, like, and I mean the whole like monitors are designed around the fact that humans have 3 colors that they see, or primary colors, and what depths that we see, and what
resolution?
Solid angle resolution that we can perceive. Yes. And so yeah, in terms of encoding, you have all sorts of different trade-offs that you can make, and also trying to have optimization, like because it's a low C compression that you usually use for video, to get it down to some tractable bit rate that you can carry on the network. You have to, of course, lose some information, and you try to lose it where the human eye will not see it. So either because it's fast movement and we can't see the details, or because it's some small detail that we can't really perceive in terms of, for instance, color is less. We put less information on the colors and on the light brightness because the human eye is just more sensitive to brightness. Now, having said that, I'm not one of the person working on it. I know, for instance, the X264 developers have worked a lot on these aspects, and it's now probably the best known and the best video encoder, at least software video encoder out there in the world. And we're very proud to have that as part of one of our projects in the foundation. But yeah, I mean there's all sorts of interesting trade-offs that you can have, and there's a lot of research. It's not an exact science, let's say.
And probably you have some contact with some researchers or institutions, universities, or whatever, which you base this work on, or it's just the developers bring you patches based on their connections.
So originally, so to some extent, yes, there is research in universities. I mean, the original developer of X264 was doing it as a university project to get credit, that he got study credit for. Nowadays, I think it's mostly private research, so it's like Google, Mozilla, this kind of organization who are actually funding paid researchers or engineers to do that kind of work. There is also the standardization aspect, so when they standardize a new codec, and that's what just concluded now with AV1, for instance, they will have specialists determining what kind of mathematical construct would be good to like compress the data with a minimal visually perceptible loss, of course. So they will have to determine what kind of filter, what kind of transform is relevant and useful, and both in terms of computational feasibility and in terms of applicability to human vision. Yeah.
And the other question, except these, I think starting from the programming part, we have touched the scientific, and there's a legal part, because I know that there was the thing in the news some time ago about the Kodi player, if I remember correctly, which included the piece of the torrent client, and some legal authorities begin to go after the users of this player, exactly, because they downloaded the player, but they also got the torrent. They don't own torrents, and this is distributing the content which they don't own, and blah 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 and so on. The other thing is that the encoding of the video is also a subtle thing. While the encoding means you can repack something, alter something. It opens the door to some legal issues. Can you comment on that?
So there's really two aspects there. I mean, there's the piracy aspect, which would be the Kodi issue, and then there's a patent, mostly a patent. But
I understand that it somehow is inherently connected to the player realm. This.
So regarding the piracy and the problem that Kodi or maybe not Kodi as such, but some of the distributors of Kodi have had in the recent 2 years or so, I think it boils down to they were making it a bit too easy for people to go. This is not only providing a BitTorrent client, but actually giving addresses of where you might download things illegally, and then of course that probably touch a nerve with certain content owners, right owners, and I mean, from a legal standpoint, in the countries affected, I can't really comment. It's not even my country, and I am not a specialist, but it's somewhere where we haven't been as a project. So VideoLAN does not give you, VLC does not give you any link to content piracy website or other services.
It's probably good.
I'm sure. I mean, obviously, a lot of people do use VLC to play pirated content. It's not the only use case, but it is a use case. But it's not something that we actively promote, and so there's no. So we try to stay clear on that side. As for the patent issue and the codec issue, so that has been one problem for us in an insidious way, because it hasn't prevented us from keeping our project going. But of course, it might have discouraged certain, especially commercial users, those that would have invested in our project, from using it, especially earlier. We haven't had a problem, and I think one of the reasons is that we are based in Europe, and in Europe, generally, at least in the European Union, and I think in most other European countries, probably also Russia, software patents aren't really valid as such. So there is some kind of gray area that if you have a software patent, but it applies to hardware in a way, then it can be patented. But because we only deliver software and we don't deliver any hardware, we are clear. We are in the clear. But yes, there has been, and we have. I mean, I don't have any concrete example I can give, but we have heard some rumors of some problems.
If I remember correctly, you cannot patent an algorithm in Russia. You can of course be the owner of the complete piece of software, but the algorithm is impatentable.
Because we have our own implementation, there is no copyright issue, but there can be patent issues, and that would be a problem, especially in North America and Japan, for instance.
I see. And the third subtle issue, which I probably mentioned, but haven't delivered, is that. I read about that. It's not that I know about it, but I read about something about that. That the thing which can encode video, it's considered by some people, of course it's an exaggeration, but still, as a legal issue by itself, because it can grab, recode, you see, copy and alter it of something which already exists. You see the copying machine, the copying machine which copies, let's say, money, seems to be illegal. The copying machine which copies the work of art is not illegal per se, but it's still something which, being an art dealer, we wouldn't like. So, and you see the idea, what's behind it. And I have read that there are some legal issues with the encoding software just because it is, not certified, easily available. And so on. Haven't you encountered anything like that?
We haven't had too much problems because
streaming, for example, because could be an issue.
VLC hasn't made it maybe too easy. It's not that easy to make illegal copies. Like we can't just upload to BitTorrent. Well, it's not even correct terminology, but we can't send something with BitTorrent using VLC. It's not really making it easy to pirate stuff. Now the video encoding, like the low-level video encoding algorithms, is not something that content owner would go after because they are using it themselves. I mean, there are some actual DVD, not DVDs, but Blu-rays that are actually being encoded with x264. It wouldn't be in the interest of the content owner to shut down the x264 project when they are themselves using it commercially. I think
people tend to do stupid things.
Yes. So, I think it's more. Again, it's more of a problem that for certain projects that are really too close to piracy in their use case and in their user experience, and VLC hasn't really emphasized. I mean, technically you could rip a DVD and make a DivX, which that's something people did when they were teenagers, and people my generation did when they were teenagers. But you can do that with VLC, but it's not something that people do with VLC. There are softwares that are more focused on that, and so we wouldn't be something that people
in any case, nobody is after you and after your project from even on this filmsy ground. The more general question I'd like to ask you, what do you think in the last year, what interesting can happen in the technical world, or maybe in your area, or even wider? What are the news of this year?
So, what new area? So I guess, as some of the things I mentioned in the talk, so we have of course, in terms of video, we have things like 360 videos, might actually happen. It seems that at least unlike 3D videos, which don't really seem to be catching on, a 3D video, 360 is something that, very wide angle is something that might be catching on because it's something maybe that is more accessible to people. You can actually buy a camera that records such a video, whereas stereo, like, it's really hard to render. You will need a special screen. It's a really special setup. There's of course maybe less user visible. There's AV1 video codec, which I think is going to be a great thing because it beats all the existing video codecs in terms of efficiency and quality, and it's totally open source compatible. So there's no problem with the patents this time. Well, there are patents, but they are available for open source implementations. So we have object-oriented audio, which may or may not catch on. I'm not sure. Of course, a lot of the things we implement, it's still some years before they get into broad use or not, and so it's kind of hard for us to. Sometimes we implement features that just don't really catch on. Sometimes we implement features a little late, and people are moving to something else because we didn't catch on in time. It's a bit hard to predict, but these are some of the user visible things maybe. And one thing we are working on a lot, of course, is actually streaming within your short-range streaming, so like Chromecast, AirPlay, UPnP, DLNA, as it might be known. So no longer just on your computer, but streaming within your whole home, kind of thing, and making it accessible because it's been technically feasible for 15 years, but it wasn't very accessible to normal users. And this is something that is getting increasingly important. I think part of the reason is just that people have more and more electronic connected devices at home. So of course it starts you have connected TVs and all sorts of phones and tablets, and that wasn't the case 10 years ago.
There's a lot of things going right inside the project. Even when everything happens all the day, but even inside your project, there is a lot of interesting things. And coming to my next question, probably would be my last question, is that if you would be the young, fresh programmer who is thinking that the open source software is a good thing, and I'd like to take part in some project, but I'm not experienced in that, either in the how it works technically or how it works socially. What would you recommend to be the first project to start with, or maybe some criteria to choose such a project?
I think one importance. I think where people tend to fail and what the main trap to avoid when you're in a situation like you're a student typically is not to be overly ambitious. We see a lot of people who I'd like to do this simple thing from a description point of view, but it's actually extremely complicated in terms of implementation. And of course it's hard to realize this a priori, but first ask if it's realistic to somebody who understands how this works. And for us, we have, for instance, a chat that you can ask. But try to start with small things, and also try to start with something that you're interested in, because if you're not really interested, you're not going to lose motivation. And of course, nowadays, many open source projects have become quite mature, and they have reached a certain complexity and certain.
Yes, that's the reason one of the reasons of my question is right there.
And of course, people have. It's probably harder to join a project now than it was 15 years ago when I joined. It's a bit unfortunate, but that's the way it is. So it's really important to start with something small and something you're interested in, and some programming language that you know, because don't put too many hurdles in the way. Try to minimize the number of hurdles you're going to have. So try to target a project that you already have learned the programming language, and if you haven't, then take a book and learn on the book before you start getting into the project, one step at a time, basically, because it's going to be a steep learning curve. In multimedia, if you manage to do something, then it's really good for your CV, so it's really something that it's worth the investment. But I think, you really need to do it one step at a time, and try to talk to people, ask smart questions. So don't try to do things as much as you can independently, but also ask people if you're trying to do is realistic and raw things. But so, yes, I think that those are the key points. Now, we do have documentation, and I think many projects have documentation, and on how to set up and start. And we and many other projects have a publicly available bug tracker where you can get ideas what more or less simple issues that you can work on. And there's no shortage of silly small problems to tackle that just nobody has tackled, and it might be open. Again, just come and ask, is this problem still something that needs to be solved before you solve it? Because maybe somebody just forgot to close the bug report, but in many cases it's actually something that you can work on and then just work on it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's it is doable. Of course, you need to spend. It's going to take time, and you need to try to keep one small step at a time so that you can climb up the learning curve.
So for you, the young professionals, if you want to go into open source, according to Mr. Remi Denis Courmont, you need to pick up something which you are interested in, which you can easily start. It's not too big, and there is, and by the way, there is a lot of interesting things happening all the time inside the VLC project, and the best thing that you wouldn't be arrested by contributing to it.
No, there's no risk
Thank
of
you
that.
very much.
No, thanks.